My sister slept around while married and lied to her boss about her kids, then used me as a babysitter until I finally cut everyone off. My sister, let's call her Miranda, has always been a constant source of stress in my life. We never really got along. She's extremely manipulative and often shows narcissistic tendencies. Miranda was born prematurely, which triggered an overly protective attitude in my parents. Sadly, this meant that throughout my childhood, I was often overlooked. They would forget to come to my school plays or basketball games, and sometimes even forget to pick me up afterward. Birthday gifts were another sore spot. While Miranda received thoughtful presents from our parents that made her beam with joy, I would end up with random things like books or teddy bears, neither of which I ever liked. It became a steady pattern of feeling overshadowed and ignored by both my parents and my sister. Dealing with my parents' mistakes was difficult enough, but my sister took things even further, thriving on their favoritism. She would take advantage of their bias against me, like the time she ripped up my favorite dress while I slept just because a boy she liked asked me out instead of her. I was devastated and couldn't stop crying because that dress meant a lot to me. When I told my parents and they confronted her, she immediately turned on the waterworks, crying and claiming she liked the guy first and that I was intentionally doing this to hurt her because I hated her. To my shock, my parents bought her sob story and told me to stay away from any boys Miranda liked, as if it would spare her feelings. It felt completely unfair, especially since it wasn't even my fault the boy was interested in me. There was another time when I spent weeks convincing my parents to take me to Six Flags for my birthday, since I loved adventure parks. But Miranda found out and decided she wanted to go to Six Flags for her birthday, too. Since her birthday was before mine, my parents gave in and took her there instead. She barely went on any rides, and I could tell she only picked that place out of spite. For my own birthday, my parents just took me out to our usual family restaurant. I was incredibly let down, but my parents said there was no point going to Six Flags again the same year. As we got older, Miranda only got worse. She'd give me backhanded compliments like, "Your face looks better with your glasses," or "You have a crush on a boy. I thought you were a lesbian." I always tried to keep a low profile growing up, but unlike Miranda, was everyone's favorite. She acted kind and helpful to everyone else, but behind closed doors, she was an absolute nightmare to me. She was only ever nice when she needed something. Once she got what she wanted, she'd go back to ignoring or bullying me. Her skill at making me feel insecure didn't stop with my look-sit extended to the people. I dated when I was 17. I had my first boyfriend, but Miranda managed to fill my head with doubts. She'd say things like, "He's way too attractive. For you, he's definitely going to break up with you. You should dump him first." Whenever my boyfriend visited, she'd get a little too close to him, touch his arm, or laugh way too loudly at his jokes. My boyfriend was obviously uncomfortable. After months of Miranda's constant doubt-mongering, I ended up breaking up with him. Looking back now, I realize it was wrong to treat him that way. He seemed like a genuinely nice guy. Later, when I moved to another state to study engineering in college, I'd come home during the holidays only to be greeted by more of Miranda's sly, undermining comments. The toxic environment just never seemed to go away. When I was 25, Miranda met her now husband Dave, and after 2 years of dating, they decided to get married. She announced her engagement to everyone's surprise, especially since she'd been secretly seeing other guys. During her relationship with Dave, something a few of us knew about. Still, we were happy she was finally settling down with a good guy. Not long after, Miranda asked me to be her maid of honor. My parents were thrilled. The news that I was going to be a part of the wedding was celebrated by my parents, while I had the complete opposite reaction. I knew being her maid of honor wouldn't be easy, and I was quickly proven right. Miranda used this role as a tool to control and manipulate me. She constantly threatened to demote or remove me from the position if I did anything she disliked, making the whole experience tense and exhausting. Whenever she asked for my opinion, I, being true to myself, gave honest answers, but each time, she would blow up, blame me, and yell endlessly. Faced with her explosive outbursts, I decided to stay quiet, avoiding saying anything that might set her off. I couldn't stand the constant verbal attacks, so I preferred to keep the peace. One afternoon at lunch, we were discussing wedding plans, and I simply asked if the maid of honor would wear a different dress, just trying to understand her vision better. She immediately started shouting that I was making everything about myself by assuming I was still the maid of honor. We moved on to talking about overnight guests and where they'd stay. My mom suggested booking Airbnbs well in advance, and I agreed. That set Miranda off again. She insisted she'd already talked it over with her fiancé, and they'd be booking hotel rooms. And if we wanted Airbnbs, we'd have to book them ourselves. She continued yelling, saying I wasn't thinking for myself and should discuss everything with her first because, as her maid of honor, I basically worked for her. I shut down, trying to de-escalate the situation, but she accused me of being negative and having an attitude. My mom tried to step in, but Miranda just talked over her, repeating that she didn't want to deal with such an immature maid of honor, and that I needed to do better. At that point, I just stayed quiet, hoping she'd stop yelling. Eventually, she decided to leave and wanted me to head home as well. As we got to the car, we sat in the parking lot and she kept yelling at me for another 10 minutes, going over the same complaints. All I wanted was to get away, but my car was a 20-minute walk from there, leaving me stuck in the situation when the wedding day finally came. The ceremony itself went fairly well, but Miranda found ways to fight with me over small things. During the reception, she would yell at me in front of everyone, making everything uncomfortable and tense. I could see her glaring at me between events, whether she was upset about the music choices or because the waitstaff wasn't serving drinks fast enough. When it was time for me to give my speech, I stood up hoping to share some genuine, heartfelt words, but Miranda signaled for me to hurry up and finish. Later, she confronted me, saying my speech was too focused on her childhood and that I had embarrassed her in front of her in-laws. I was devastated everyone else enjoyed my speech, even our parents, who had no complaints. The morning after the wedding, as the chaos finally died down, I realized how much anxiety she had caused me over the last few months. I saw clearly that she had been the problem all along. I wished I'd been brave enough to walk away from the wedding, but I knew my family would have blamed me. At least, now that it was over, I could focus on my own life and career. A few months later, I met my current boyfriend, Tom. As we dated and eventually moved in together after a year, my parents were thrilled for me. My sister, though, made it clear she disapproved, saying Tom was too nerdy, just a computer geek in her opinion. The reality was that Tom worked in IT and actually earned 3 times my salary. But Miranda knew nothing about that, and honestly, I didn't care. I loved him no matter what she thought. Then my life took another turn when Miranda announced at a family dinner that she was pregnant. If you're wondering why this mattered to me, well, she immediately added that she couldn't wait for me to become an aunt because she'd need my help a lot during her pregnancy. I was stunned. She was an adult about to have a child. But instead of relying on her husband or our parents, she was already turning to me for support. Instead of asking our parents for help, Miranda expected me to babysit her child. There had never been any kids around me growing up, so I had absolutely no experience with children. Honestly, I'd always felt completely out of place around kids and never wanted any of my own. I was genuinely content with that part of my life, so her words really threw me off. I felt kind of trapped in that moment, knowing she'd likely find some way to make me babysit, especially because I worked from home, making it easy for her to just drop her child off whenever she wanted. There were never any boundaries with her, If I tried to set one, my parents would always take her side. When my sister had her first child, I watched her baby occasionally, and it didn't bother me much at first. Her husband worked nights, and she had a day job, so I was usually there to help while he caught a few hours of sleep. I was never entirely alone with the baby, and the first time I babysat, the child was already 6 months old, which made it more manageable for me. Unfortunately, the arrangement became less occasional as time went on. I found myself babysitting more and more, and Miranda started criticizing everything I did. I'd be working and suddenly get a call from my sister or my mom asking about my weekend plans. If I said I had no plans, they would just tell me I'd be going to my sister's to give her a break, and that was that. Their requests started making me feel like I had a second job, one I never got paid for. You'd think Miranda would be grateful, but she never was. Every time I left her house, she'd call my mom to complain about how I watched her child. According to her, I wasn't changing diapers correctly or feeding the baby the right way, just petty things that drove me crazy, especially since I was helping her out for free. That's how manipulative she was. Miranda and I were clearly not close, and she should have appreciated that I was even trying. But she'd be nice to my face and then badmouth me behind my back, making our relationship even worse. After that, I got really fed up. It started taking a toll on my mental health, and Tom noticed it too. One day, we talked, and I completely broke down. He encouraged me to stand up for myself with my family. So the next time I got called to babysit, I flat out refused. Miranda and my mom kept calling, urging me to do it for family, but I finally put my foot down and told them no. I felt like I'd done more than enough and didn't want anything to do with Miranda or her child anymore. I cut off all contact with her. She even showed up at my place after calling with no answer. But I still refused to let her in. My parents tried to force me to forgive her, but eventually they realized I wasn't going to give in. I still talked to my parents sometimes, but that was it. This went on for 2 years, during which Miranda had another child with Dave. Last year, my mom called to tell me that Miranda and Dave were getting divorced. I was surprised even though I wanted nothing to do with her. The news was unexpected. When I pressed my mom for more details, she explained that Miranda had been sleeping with her coworkers. Apparently, Dave found all sorts of inappropriate messages on her second phone, one she always kept hidden from him. He took all the evidence to a lawyer and filed for divorce. Miranda was totally blindsided. Dave served her the divorce papers right away, and when she tried to talk him out of it, he told her he already knew everything. Miranda begged him to forgive her, but he left. I was honestly shocked by how things turned out, but looking back, Dave was always too good for her, so I was kind of glad he got out of the situation. After Miranda's divorce was finalized, she had to move back in with our parents. I'd hear from them about how Miranda stayed out all night and would come home in the morning drunk, reeking of alcohol. She ended up losing her job because she stopped showing up to work on time. As time went on, Miranda leaned on alcohol more and more. My parents had to look after her kids while she was out partying. This routine had been happening for months. Meanwhile, my own life was going really well, and I adopted a dog, and we're proud pet parents. We even bought a house together, both of our names on the deed, and we've been slowly settling in. We've talked about marriage, but there's no rush. We both know we're committed to each other for life, so we're taking things at our own pace. When I hosted a housewarming party, I had to invite my parents. But they showed up with my sister and her kids without asking me. I was furious seeing her, but didn't want to cause a scene, so I stayed quiet. Tom welcomed everyone and served drinks while I just shot angry looks at my parents. My dad pulled me aside and awkwardly admitted that he hadn't wanted to bring Miranda, but our mother insisted, thinking this was the perfect time for us to reconcile. Miranda loudly told her kids to come hug me since I was their aunt. I forced a smile as they hugged me. She then began telling me I should be a more involved aunt since her kids hardly recognized me, and that I should make more of an effort. I clenched my teeth to keep myself from saying something that would embarrass her in front of everyone. Throughout the party, I noticed Miranda downing glass after glass of wine, never once checking on her kids. Her children were wild chasing after my dog, trying to kick it or yank its tail, and attempting to get into our bedroom, which I'd closed off for a reason. They even broke a vase while running around. I was reaching my breaking point, glancing at Miranda for some sign she'd step in, but she didn't even care. She was just laughing and drinking, totally oblivious. When some guests wanted a house tour, Miranda tagged along. I showed everyone around, and as we walked into the backyard, Miranda loudly commented that the place was too big for just 2 people. Then started asking if I planned on having kids. This got everyone else interested, and they all stared at me, waiting for an answer. I immediately shut her down, telling her that my life choices were none of her business. Miranda just shot back that as an aunt, my decisions were everyone's concern. I could feel the frustration rising, but I kept my composure for the sake of my guests as the evening wore on. Miranda's drinking got worse, and her behavior became more obnoxious. She began making snide comments about my relationship with Tom, implying that we were wasting our time by not getting married and having children. I could sense how uncomfortable everyone was, but I tried to ignore her. Later, after most of the guests had left, I decided I couldn't let it go any longer. I pulled Miranda aside and confronted her about how she'd acted, especially considering everything that had happened between us. Predictably, Miranda didn't take it well. She accused me of being stuck up and ungrateful for all the times she claimed I owed her for babysitting her kids. My parents tried to calm things down, with my mother once again urging me to forgive Miranda, but I held my ground and told them all to leave. After that incident, I wanted nothing to do with Miranda or my mother, who kept taking her side. I figured that if I just cut them off, I'd finally have peace. But yesterday morning, I was caught off guard by a knock at my door. Miranda stood there, looking desperate. She quickly explained she was in a bind and needed help, claiming there was an emergency at work and no one else to watch her kids. She begged me to take care of them, promising it would only be for a few hours. Her kids looked exhausted, like she'd dragged them straight out of bed to bring them over. When I asked about my parents, she said they were at our aunt's house, which I later confirmed. I suggested she could call her ex-husband, but she immediately said he was still sleeping after his night shift and wasn't answering. So she had no choice but to come to me. Begrudgingly, I agreed to watch her kids, and Miranda left looking relieved. As I closed the door, I felt a mix of frustration and empathy. Couldn't believe she'd just dropped her children on me with no warning or consideration for my plans. Still, I decided to make the best of it for the kids' sake. We played games, watched cartoons, and I even set up an arts and crafts session. To my surprise, they settled in quickly and became much easier to handle. Over time, I actually started to enjoy their company. When it was lunchtime, I realized I had no idea if the kids had allergies, and I wasn't about to risk it without checking with Miranda first. I called her, hoping she'd pick up, but got no response. I tried again, but ended up with her voicemail. Left with no other choice, I was direct with the kids, gently explaining that their mom must be busy at work and asking if they had any allergies or foods they couldn't eat. The oldest, while chatting about her likes and dislikes, accidentally let slip that maybe her mom was busy at a wedding. I was confused and pressed her for details. She hesitated, then admitted she'd overheard Miranda talking with a friend about the wedding on their drive to my place. Everything suddenly made sense, and I was furious. I thanked the kids for being honest and reassured them everything was fine. Then, I immediately called my parents to get the full story. After pushing a bit, my mother finally confessed that Miranda had, in fact, gone to a child-free wedding. with her new boyfriend who had no idea she was a mother of two. My mom tried to justify Miranda's choices by saying that some men don't want to date single moms, so Miranda chose to keep her kids a secret. But I was livid my sister had lied and manipulated me yet again. Using my willingness to help for her own convenience, I checked Miranda's social media to confirm. And sure enough, she had posted Instagram stories from the wedding, smiling and drinking during the day. I shook my head in disappointment. There wasn't a single photo of her children. My sister, a mother of two, was actively pretending to be single, refusing to let her own kids be part of her public life. When Miranda came back to pick up her kids, we had a massive fight. I told her in no uncertain terms that I wanted nothing to do with her lies, and warned her that if she left her children with me again under false pretenses, I'd call Child Protective Services. Miranda exploded, cursing me out. But Tom, who had just gotten home, immediately stepped in and threatened to call the police if she didn't leave. That was enough to get her out the door. The whole incident left me completely drained. I'm grateful Tom supports me, but now my mother and aunt have been reaching out, saying I should be more understanding of the struggles of a single mother and more willing to help family in tough times. I don't want to be part of my sister's deceptions. Thank you all for being so supportive. I've received countless messages from strangers sharing their own experiences with toxic relatives like Miranda. After reading all the comments, I realized my mother is just as toxic and keeps enabling my sister's behavior, always siding with her over me, which is totally unfair since Miranda is the one causing all the problems. I'm planning to talk to my mom soon. I also called my aunt to get her side of things. Turns out, my mother hadn't told her the whole story, so I filled her in. After learning how Miranda lied to me and forced me to babysit, and that she's hiding her kids from her boyfriend, my aunt apologized to me and promised to talk to my mom. I'm not sure what was said, but my mother messaged me saying I shouldn't get others involved in our family business or throw my sister under the bus. It's exhausting how many ridiculous excuses my mother can invent to justify Miranda's behavior, yet she never actually holds her accountable for anything. It's been 2 weeks since my last update. Even though I've tried to put distance between myself and Miranda, family tensions have only grown. My mother keeps pressuring me to forgive Miranda and be involved in her life, mainly by babysitting her kids. She's even started using emotional blackmail, saying she and Dad are getting older and that Miranda will be the only family I'll have left. I finally decided to have an honest talk with my mom and asked her to meet me alone. I warned her beforehand not to bring up Miranda or try to force reconciliation, and she agreed. We met at a quiet cafe. As we settled in, I took a deep breath, bracing myself for a tough conversation. I started by telling her how much I love her and Dad and how I want a healthy relationship with them. I acknowledged her worries about getting older and how important family unity is. But I also stressed that my own well-being is vital for any real relationship, including the one I have with her. I explained how much Miranda's manipulations have affected me over the years and how I needed to protect my mental health. My mom looked visibly conflicted as I described moments from my childhood when I felt ignored, used, and taken for granted. Hoping she'd finally grasp just how much it hurt, I saw guilt and realization flicker across her face as I spoke. Then, after a long pause, she did something unexpected. She admitted that she'd always known about Miranda's manipulative side, but had chosen to ignore it for the sake of keeping the family together. She confessed that when Miranda was born premature and had health issues, it terrified her. She became extremely protective, which made her blind to Miranda's flaws, simply feeling grateful her child survived. Hearing that was heartbreaking. I gently reminded her that I was her child too, and that I needed her growing up, even if I was born healthy. I let her know I understood how hard it must have been for her, but stressed that it wasn't fair to me. I urged her to talk to Miranda. Because if things didn't change, her own kids would end up resenting her the same way I did. I told her real healing in the family could only happen if everyone acknowledged and faced the issues. To my surprise, my mom nodded in agreement. We talked about boundaries, and I told her I needed space, so I was going to take some time apart. My mother started to plead with me, saying she hoped I wouldn't disappear for years, because she truly loved me and regretted how things turned out. I reassured her that I wasn't planning to disappear, but I needed a break. After that, I felt a lot lighter. Later, my dad reached out on his own, acknowledging Miranda's toxic behavior and saying he understood why I made the choices I did. He admitted he regretted enabling Miranda and promised he respected my decision to focus on myself. He told me he'd always be there if I needed him, which honestly meant the world to me. I've cut Miranda out completely and even installed cameras at my door, so if she tries anything again, I'll have proof and can take legal action. It's been for months since my last update. People have been asking for an update, but I disappeared from social media for a while and deleted all my apps. My mental health has gotten much better, and I've been going to therapy. I've been pouring my energy into personal growth. Tom and I are stronger than ever. He actually proposed to me last month during a romantic date on the beach. It was so sweet to see him trembling as he got down on one knee and pulled out the ring. I can't believe I'm finally going to marry this amazing man in just a few months. I've told my parents about the engagement. And even though we don't talk much, they're genuinely thrilled for me and adore Tom. Meanwhile, I heard that Miranda has finally moved out of my parents' house after they lost patience with her. Constant late-night partying and drinking all day. Naturally, she fought with them, but in the end, she had no choice but to leave. My parents offered to pay her rent for 6 months, but after that, she's on her own. Dave still pays child support every month, but I doubt that covers all of Miranda's expenses. For the sake of her kids, I really hope she finally decides to take responsibility and grow up at least once in her life.